What's up? I'm Amanda Costco, and you're listening to the Electric Runway podcast, a podcast exploring the intersection of fashion and technology. Welcome back to the show. I hope you enjoyed your summer. It's September, which means it's officially fashion season. But before our runway shows kick off in New York, we're bringing you a conversation about sustainability in the fashion industry. When it comes to sustainability, it seems as though the fashion industry is experiencing a kind of reckoning. According to a recent article from Fast Company, the fashion sector is accelerating the pace of the predicted climate disaster. In 2015, fashion and manufacturing generated 1.2 billion tons of greenhouse gases and is responsible for a fifth of the global water pollution and a third of microplastics in the ocean. So what are fashion brands doing about it? As a consumer, it's difficult to wade through the array of information that's out there. Fast fashion chains like H&M and Zara are making efforts towards using more responsible materials and recycling through take-back programs. But how are you, as a shopper, truly supposed to know who made your clothes and which ones are really sustainable? At the same time, new business models like clothing rental services that are popping up seem to be a reaction to mass consumption, but can they really thrive? Here to help us sort through it all is Kelly Drennen. Kelly has been an advocate for sustainability in the fashion industry for more than a decade. She is a sustainable fashion expert and advocate for the circular economy, as well as the founder of Fashion Takes Action, the only nonprofit in Canada dedicated to creating a conscious fashion future. Kelly is also the organizer of WEAR, that's the World Ethical Apparel Roundtable, and Electric Runway is proud to be a supporting media partner of this exciting upcoming event. As such, we'll be bringing you conversations from key thinkers at WEAR leading up to the October event, so stay tuned for that. If you'd like to attend, use the discount code ER15 to receive 15% off your tickets. Head to Electric Runway for more details. We'll also be covering WEAR live from the summit floor, so stay tuned to us on socials. We're at electric_runway. Without further ado, here's my conversation with sustainability expert Kelly Drennen. So Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So for those who don't know, who are you and what is Fashion Takes Action?
So I'm Kelly Drennen. I'm the founding executive director of Fashion Takes Action, and we are Canada's only nonprofit organization that's devoted to the advancement of sustainability. And over the past 12 years, we've seen some really incredible shift toward more positive social and environmental impacts. And through Fashion Takes Action, we have a few main programs. We have a student program called My Clothes, My World, which we deliver to students in grades 4 to 12 that teaches them about the impacts of fashion, but also empowers them with solutions and tools that they can implement in their daily lives to be more responsible consumers. And the great thing about that is, we're reaching them before they're consumers. And so we're really educating future consumers, future generations. We also produce a conference annually called the World Ethical Apparel Roundtable, or WEAR, that brings together industry stakeholders from across Canada and the US to really sort of tackle some of the negative impacts and share best practices and solutions in an effort to really push the industry, particularly here in Canada, toward more sustainable strategies and solutions. And then we also do work convening something called the Ontario Textile Diversion Collaborative, or OTDC. And that is a group of about 40 stakeholders, from charities and collectors to retailers, brands, NGOs, academics, and government, to really tackle the issue of textile waste and look at how we can divert textiles out of the landfill, but also looking at the opportunity or the feasibility of a local recycling industry here in Ontario.
Yeah, it's such important work that you're doing, and it seems that sustainability is on the tip of everybody's tongue right now. Would you agree that the fashion industry is experiencing a kind of reckoning right now when it comes to sustainability? And if so, what do you think are the contributing factors?
Absolutely. It's sort of like the golden era right now of sustainability for the fashion industry. And I think there's a number of contributing factors. I think it is one of the last industries to really engage in sustainability. But at the same time, the progress that we're seeing is really happening at lightning speed. The shift really started in 2013, I think, when the Rana Plaza factory collapsed, that tragedy occurred. It really had brands, looking back across their supply chain and trying to figure out how they could actually trace beyond tier one and who is actually making their clothes and which factories are subcontracting out to other factories. And that really sort of began more of a social shift. But then with the onset of climate change and the emergency that we are in as a planet, and the many, many contributing factors that the fashion industry has towards that, including water usage and pollution, waste, especially in the use of chemicals and CO2 emissions, I really think that all of that has contributed to this really incredible progress that we are seeing.
Yeah, and I would also say that perhaps social media has given consumers the power to voice how they feel about brands who manufacture in unethical ways. I'm thinking specifically of this, hashtag who made my clothes initiative that we've seen online where consumers can actually have a voice here and really say that, it matters to me who made my clothes. It matters to me that those women and men died in Rana Plaza. And I want to be a consumer, but I don't want to consume in this way.
Absolutely. I think social media for sure has been a great tool for asking brands, to be more transparent and putting that pressure on those brands. It's funny though, because what's happened is you look at transparency as showing your supply chain. That's the storytelling, right? Like telling your stakeholders how the clothes are made. But in order to be transparent and show, you first need to be able to trace and what we call know. So it's knowing first and then showing. With this increase in demand for transparency, we're seeing a lot of brands actually scrambling and thinking, okay, well, we can't really talk about what we're doing yet, but let's first start by getting to know our supply chain. And then once we have all of that in place, we can then tell the story. But yes, absolutely. Fashion Revolution has been a huge sort of global campaign that's really rallied a lot of conscious consumers to sort of empower them with the tools to demand for that.
Yeah, now we're seeing brands like Everlane, for example, come out. And when you're buying a shirt or a pair of pants on Everlane, you can actually see the factories where the clothing is manufactured, which is kind of the exact opposite of the way it used to be done. It used to be that fashion brands would hide their suppliers because this was almost like trade secrets. And now we have the inverse where we have it being displayed because, these companies like Everlane are proud of where their supply chain leads to. So it's a really interesting time for sure. On the note of social media, I wanted to ask you, what role do you feel technology has played in contributing towards the rise of fast fashion?
Well, yeah, I think social media, Instagram, influencers, hoarders, YouTube hoarding videos. Unfortunately, that's the sort of downside of social media is that there's a lot of consumption that's being promoted. And of course, people never want to be seen wearing the same garment twice. So it's just sort of fueling this sort of overconsumption mess that we're in. But also, e-commerce, if we're talking sort of the bigger picture technology, I mean, the rise of e-commerce has definitely made fast fashion more accessible, particularly when you get free shipping. And then you get into the issue of returns, right? And sort of with the rise of e-commerce, we're seeing about a 30% increase in return goods. And what most people don't realize is that, that is creating a huge problem when it comes to waste, because a lot of those items don't actually make their way back onto the shelves. They'll actually sit in a warehouse and then really they're destined for landfill or incineration. Bigger picture, e-commerce and social media has definitely contributed to the rise of fast fashion, making it just that much more accessible and desirable.
Yeah, I mean, as a consumer, I now expect free shipping in 2 days, 3 days. And if I don't like it, I want that option to send it back. But we do have to start thinking about the energy costs, even of getting the items to me and being able to deliver on that 2 day shipping. So,
And the
yeah,
packaging too, right? The packaging,
yeah.
it's just you send everything in separate plastic bags. Like it's really
And it's all these small things that add up to more waste in the landfill, more energy that is consumed unnecessarily. And we have a heating up planet and excess waste. A lot of companies now have caught on that consumers care about being, socially responsible. But then at the same time, there's a lot of greenwashing that goes on. And you can look at a campaign and say, okay, well, on the surface, that looks good. They're trying to make a step in the right direction. But if you're a consumer and you really want to understand who made your clothes and if something is or is not sustainable, how do we structure the conversation around sustainability for consumers?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, first of all, we have to recognize that there's a number of different ways that we can be sustainable when it comes to our wardrobe. It doesn't necessarily just mean going out and buying something new. So, buying thrift and secondhand is a really great part of the conversation around sustainability, as is swapping and repurposing or renting, even repairing, learning how to sew on a button or the hole in the toe of your sock. But when it comes to buying new, looking for information on the company's website, right? So that's sort of your first flag. If there's nothing there, then they're definitely either hiding something or they're just not really engaged in sustainability at all. But for the ones that do have mentions of sustainability, I think it's important that we take the time to just dig a little bit deeper, look for things like certifications, look to see who maybe they're partnered with, if they're affiliated with any global NGOs or charities. And really, if they have a sustainability report, that's also a really good indication of what they're doing. But at the same time, it's really important for us to recognize that perfection doesn't exist in this space and that we really need to celebrate the progress that is being made. That's just something that we should not only consider when it comes to brands, but even as ourselves as consumers. We can't really beat ourselves up over the fact that our wardrobe isn't completely sustainable. We have to be able to do our part. And sometimes that just means small steps, and that's okay. There's some really great apps out there as well. Like there's one called Good On You, where you can basically pull up any brand and they'll have a score based on things like labor or water, chemicals, and waste. And it's pretty trusted. So if you're really struggling and you can't figure it out, it's always good to check with a third party like an app like that.
Yeah, it's a great resource. And do you think that fast fashion companies can be sustainable? Because we're seeing, like Zara and H&M making these efforts towards recycling programs or sustainable fabric. By 2025, for example, Zara wants to use only sustainable fabrics. But at the same time, these are fast fashion companies. So is there a paradigm there? Can you be a fast fashion company and be sustainable at the same time? Or is it an oxymoron?
Yeah, it is an oxymoron because of the fact that fast fashion inherently is about consuming and quickly. But at the same time, it really isn't going anywhere. And I think it's important for some of the bigger ones that you've mentioned, Zara and H&M. I think it's really important for them to take a leadership position. And yeah, setting goals is great, but you have to go deeper than that. And it's a good place to start, and it can act as, sort of the North Star from a strategic place with brands. But, once we hit 2025, what then? Are we going to see statements like, oh, well, we tried and we couldn't get there. And so now it's 2030 or it's 2040. So it's definitely tricky, and sustainable fast fashion is a term that a lot of people just really kind of don't understand because it is an oxymoron, the irony, right? But I think, some of these fast fashion brands, the way that they address sustainability is through recycling programs, so in-store take-back programs, and using a percentage of those textiles to make new clothing, but also sourcing sustainable fabrics. That's great that Zara's made that commitment. I know H&M has a similar one around sourcing sustainable cotton. These are the brands that have a lot of buying power. So if we, on a larger industry-wide scale, want to see more organic cotton and recycled content, then it's these brands' responsibility, I think, to inspire and motivate a lot of the other brands, fast fashion brands in particular, who aren't doing anything to really start engaging in this.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I know we're going to delve into this deeper at Wear, which is coming up in October. How do we structure the conversation around sustainability for fashion brands?
Well, again, I think it's really important for brands to know their supply chain, right? And to understand where along their supply chain they see gaps or they see risks, and then really focus in on one particular area. It's too overwhelming, I think, for a lot of the brands that are really just getting started. There's so many resources out there. It's confusing. And so actually one of the things that we're doing at Wear this year, which we're really excited about, is we've partnered with PwC and we're launching a global sustainable fashion resource toolkit. So really what that's doing is removing the barrier of confusion by really sort of curating hundreds of resources that already exist and centralizing them in one web-based platform that's easily, searchable by category, by type of resource, but also by the stage you're at. So whether you're just sort of learning and need sort of to define some of the sustainability terms, whether you're planning in your planning stages or whether you're implementing or even measuring and reporting, there's going to be resources that cater to all stages of the journey. So again, it comes back though to the whole idea of progress over perfection. And, at where our theme this year is purpose meets progress. And that's partly because of the fact that we do need to recognize that there's purpose-driven businesses that are doing some really great things, but it's about progress. And so it's encouraging the brands that aren't doing anything yet to just pick something, stick with it, make a commitment. Hopefully it's short term and it's not 50 years out. And then once you've got that underway, look at what's the next most feasible and accessible area for you to improve upon. So it could be your labor, it could be what materials you're using, it could be reducing or eliminating the toxic chemicals from your supply chain. I mean, the list goes on and on, really.
Be a free resource that's available online?
It will be a free resource. We're launching it at the conference. And so everybody who attends will have first look at it. And then a few weeks after the conference, I'd say it'll be released publicly and it will be free.
So, a lot of the conversation about sustainability in the fashion industry is kind of daunting. It has this undertone of doom and gloom. But I know based on past conversations with you that you and I are both kind of excited for the future of fashion because there's a lot of really interesting new business models that are cropping up. So, what are some of these businesses that you're seeing that are both sustainable and challenging traditional fashion or retail?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the most exciting for me anyway is seeing the whole idea of this rental model, right? And this more of a sharing economy as part of the larger circular economy. It makes total sense. I think when you look at our closets that are stuffed with so many garments, I mean, we only wear 20% really of what we own. The rest of it just sits in the closet collecting dust. Particularly if you're going to a fancy event or wedding or gala, why buy a designer dress that you're only going to wear once? So it's great from an economical perspective, but it's also really great for the environment at the same time. So we're seeing a lot of brands actually starting to incorporate this rental model. See how it goes, but definitely one to watch. Also seeing a lot of re-commerce now. So there's a few businesses out there, and I think ThredUp has actually even started doing this as well, where they'll work with brands to collect their secondhand items, and then the brands will then buy them back and resell them. And then you have other interesting models like the Renewal Workshop, where they're working with brands like the North Face. So if a brand has a number of damaged items, rather than going to landfill or incineration, which is sort of traditionally where they go, the Renewal Workshop will clean those garments. And then the North Face can sell them at a reduced price. It's actually great too, because it opens the door for a whole new customer that might not have been able to afford the North Face at brand new cost, right? So we're seeing a lot of that re-commerce happening, and that's really exciting. And then even things like 3D fit technology, which is all about reducing the amount of waste. We talked before about the increase in returns that we're seeing from e-commerce. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we don't understand fit. So we aren't sure what our size is. So we might buy in 2 or 3 different sizes, keep the one that fits, and then send back the ones that don't. So with 3D fit technology, you're really eliminating that whole waste that comes from the e-commerce returns.
Yeah, and I also think that the customization and personalization aspects of it give consumers the opportunity to not only have a garment that's made for their body, but has something that has their stamp on it and it feels more special to them, and it brings that element of this was made just for me back to our clothing, which is something we don't have in fast fashion. It's something we used to have when we had a better relationship with our clothing 30, 50 years ago. I'm very optimistic based on these business models that we're seeing crop up. And I do think that, as you said, the fashion industry is just ripe to be challenged because it really hadn't disrupted itself in so long.
They want to start doing something. And that's where I think this toolkit will really help and removing that barrier of just where to start. So it's good to know that there's definitely interest and changes are happening. And I'm not going to name the brand, but there was a brand that came last year for the first time to wear, a Canadian brand, and they had an aha moment, like this, talking about reckoning, right? They left the conference and decided that they really needed to hit the ground running and develop a strategy. And within 6 months, they've created a pretty impressive strategy that involves in-store take-back programs. They've joined the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, and they're going to start using the Higg Index to trace or manage their supply chain, and they'll be sourcing sustainable materials. And so that's just really exciting to see. And they're one of many. We speak all the time with Canadian brands, and we know that there are champions within the companies who really want to see sustainability become sort of strategy for the brand overall. And so it's really great to know that there's those champions that exist within some of these fast fashion brands for sure.
Yeah, and it all starts with the education and awareness, because if they don't know, if there's not these decision makers within the company educating themselves, then, it can't spread wider than that. So while we're on the topic of wear, let's talk about it. Tell us about the Wear conference coming up.
Yeah, well, it's the 6th year now that we've hosted this conference in Toronto. And, it really is about bringing global experts to share best practices with the Canadian apparel industry. And these types of conferences tend to exist in Europe and Asia, and it's just not accessible or affordable for brands to take the time off work. There's the cost of travel. And so we really thought it was important to host something like this in Toronto to just make it easy and affordable, no excuses, just get your butt over here and learn, right? So we're really excited this year. Our theme, again, is Purpose Meets Progress. And that really is a pretty broad theme. There's so much going on, right? From waste and water pollution to labor and carbon. So having a broader theme this year really allows us to bring all of those conversations to the conference and to our attendees. And it's a real mix of panels, fireside chats, keynotes, but also our breakouts are really popular because they're an opportunity to not only meet and connect with the other fellow attendees, but you're actually, in many cases, kind of workshopping and looking at some of the challenges and coming up together with solutions. And you might be a academic or faculty member at a fashion school, and you're sitting next to, a CEO or marketing director of a brand. And together you have different perspectives, but together you're actually coming up with some solutions. And so it's that diversity amongst our attendees that really does make Wear unique. And at the same time, it's a pretty intimate environment. We have about 200 attendees, and that really allows for meaningful connections. We also encourage a lot of audience participation. It's not so fun to sit there and be talked to and then not have an opportunity to ask questions or challenge the speakers. We do encourage the tough questions even. And so it really kind of all of that together makes our conference, we think it's quite unique. And we're a conference first. We're not a trade show. And so a lot of these other conferences are really more of a trade show with sort of these sessions that you can attend. Whereas for us, it's about the content and it's really about those sessions. And so we get 95% attendance rate at all of our sessions, which is really great.
And can you tell us a little bit about the speakers that we can expect?
Yeah, we have some really great speakers this year. Circular fashion is definitely an important part of the discussion. We've had that as a theme really of the last few years. And so this year we have someone from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation will be joining us, along with Queen of Raw out of New York, who's figured out a way for brands to, use their dead stock that's otherwise just sitting in their overseas factories. And then we've got Canadian company Bank and Vogue, who's just done a really cool collaboration with Converse, making Converse sneakers out of upcycled denim. And then, of course, ThredUp. We're really excited to have them join us as well and talk about their business model and how they're actually working with brands. I mean, we all know the sort of consumer-facing business model, but what's really cool is that they are starting to work with brands now on e-commerce, as I mentioned before. But we also have a couple of women coming from HomeNet South Asia and India, and home-based workers is a topic that we've never really explored at Wear, but a lot of brands and many of them don't even know that a lot of the people making their clothes are actually working from home. And it's really important when you're looking at sort of auditing your supply chain that you also consider, the hundreds of thousands of people who are working from home and what conditions they're working in. We'll also see some really cool technology. We didn't talk about it earlier, but supply chain traceability and mapping tools that actually, again, talking about removing a barrier for the brands that really are trying to know their supply chain and trace it. There's some really great technologies available now, and blockchain and worker voice and those kinds of things. We have a material innovations panel, which is also seems to be a really popular topic, sort of what are the newest, latest sustainable fabrics that are being made, whether it's, pineapple leather, Pinatex, or hemp, which is definitely going to be a big deal here in Canada. So yeah, we've got some really incredible sessions lined up. We're going to have a session on modern slavery, looking at human rights across the supply chain. So we're really excited this year too to look at sustainable packaging is definitely an issue. And it's one that it might be an easy place for a brand to start in their sustainability journey. We talked about all those plastic bags from when you buy online. And so looking at alternatives to that and what brands are doing to address that, as well as their carbon footprint. Starting to see some brands are really doing a great job at carbon mapping and reducing their carbon footprint or becoming climate neutral or carbon neutral. So that'll be definitely part of the discussion. And we have 2 Canadian brands actually that are going to be sharing their stories around carbon and packaging, and that's Aldo and Lululemon. So we're very excited to have them this year as well, because it's important, while globally there's brands that are doing some really great things, it's also important to recognize some of the work that's being done here in Canada. And that also hopefully will inspire more of the Canadian brands to actually engage and see that it's feasible, it's easily done, or maybe not so easily, but it can be done and with success. So we're excited to have them join us as well.
Absolutely. And I think that Canada is gaining a reputation on the world stage for high performance fabrics. So Lululemon, as you mentioned, and Canada Goose, and these brands that just make really tough and durable products. And so why not use this as an opportunity to take a leadership position when it comes to sustainability, whether that's sustainable packaging or manufacturing. So it's really all very exciting, Kelly. I'm so looking forward to Wear Conference. Can you remind everybody the dates and how they can follow Fashion Takes Action and stay in touch?
Sure. Wear is happening October 7th and 8th in Toronto, and you can go to wear.fashiontakesaction.com for more information on our speakers and our agenda and to register. And then you can follow Fashion Takes Action on Instagram. It's just at Fashion Takes Action. On Twitter, we're our FTA.org, and on Facebook, we're Fashion Takes Action as well.
Great. We're going to put
one more thing. Sorry, we have a free newsletter, so you can also sign up for that on our website.
Great. We'll put all the links to Fashion Takes Action and to Wear on the blog post that will accompany this episode. Thank you so much for your time, Kelly.
Thank you, Amanda.
That was my conversation with sustainability expert Kelly Drennen. To learn more about Fashion Takes Action and all of the valuable work that Kelly and her team is involved in, visit fashiontakesaction.com. Also, be sure to check out Wear Conference, that's WEAR Conference, coming up October 7th and 8th in Toronto. For details, visit Electric Runway or go directly to wear.fashiontakesaction.com. And remember to use our discount code, that's ER15, ER15, to receive 15% off your ticket price. That's more than $70 in savings if you choose the 2-day pass. So thanks so much for tuning in. That's it for today's episode. And until next time, here's looking towards the future.